And so now in this video, I'm just going to pick up the big map example I had before and just talk about mashing up that goods exported data set with a greenhouse gas emissions data set. Okay, they're not really all that relevant, but maybe you're in Parliament and you're thinking about introducing a measure that would tax high emissions countries. Something like that. I don't know. So you could slap a trade embargo until those people stopped emitting so many greenhouse gas emissions. I don't know. Maybe you don't believe in climate change. That's okay. It seems to be a value choice these days. There's some rationale that you can build combining these two data sets. Where am I going to get the data? Well, guess where I'm going to start off with? It begins with the G. It's Google. So, greenhouse gas emissions by country, enter, and oh dear, I've only got Wikipedia there to work with. I can work with this data. Let's take a look at it. What I'm going to get with is a big database of countries and how much their emissions are. So we're going to be interested in this metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. If you don't know that a carbon dioxide equivalent is what we actually measure, what you realise is you can emit anything you like, but whatever it is you emit, it might have a carbon dioxide equivalent. So we measure it as a carbon dioxide equivalent. So it might be, I don't know, palladium into the atmosphere, which would be a really terrific idea. That there is a scale to measure how much that is in terms of carbon dioxide. Let's pick up the whole country set. Going down the list, going down the list, going down the list. Stopping at good old Z for Zimbabwe. This is just a web page. It's in a table. I Control-C that, so I copy it. Now, there's a wonderful, wonderful way to clean up HTML. This is awful data. If I try and paste this into Excel, it's going to be ugly. It's got flags, it's got rows, it's got fonts. Don't want any of that. Control-C, copy it. Now, if I go into our good friend Notepad, let's have a look at what Notepad does to this data. So I just go into Notepad. Now, the reason Notepad is terrific, it's simple, it's quick. All it does is a simple ASCII text file. There is no formatting that goes into it. If I paste the HTML from Wikipedia into Notepad, like so, Control-V, it gets rid of the flags, the commas, the table markings. If I pick up my little cursor, see how I go from the 0 and it goes all the way to the left to one space after the 0.77 next to Seychelles. That's a tab. Excel loves tabs. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pick up this entire Notepad text file, Control-A for all, Control-C to copy it again. Now it's just replaced what was in the clipboard from Wikipedia. Now I'll go to the file that I had before for Excel. Now I'll just, for the goods exported. So here's the Excel spreadsheet. I'm just going to open, what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy that. I'm going to right click, copy, right click on the desktop, I'm going to paste, and I'll just rename that. Goods exported Queensland. Okay, that sounds a terrific name with that little copy on the extra, but I want to know that it's got greenhouse gas emissions combined. Okay, double click that file. Et voila, I've got the big map from before. I've still got sitting in clipboard my greenhouse gas emissions from Wikipedia. I'm going to add a sheet. I'm going to call that GHG emissions. Okay, just because I can. I've got up to cell A1 because goodness only knows we should start with the A's and starts with 1s. Control-V. Go back to my notepad, recopy it. Okay. Remember my trick? Alt-O-C-A. Just auto-formatted everything so I can read it. Now, this is actually really clean data. Cleaner than any of the other data. What I'm going to do is I know that, yeah, okay, 2010 emissions. I can keep that for my own reference, but for my purpose I want to clean it up, so I'm going to kill that. Go to the very bottom, Control down arrow, Zimbabwe. There is nothing after that. What I can do now is I can marry up the data in the goods exported Queensland destination. Okay, I can marry that up to greenhouse gas emissions. Now, let's see what that does. What I'll do, I'll add a new sheet in here so I don't destroy that first one. Goods exported and GHG combined. Okay, so all I want to do is pick up this first two columns. I don't really need that percentage. That percentage is there to annoy me. Control Shift down arrow, Control C, and then I can just click on my little spreadsheet over here and paste it in. So I'm just copying and pasting in everything I've got from the first example. Alt-O-C-A, auto-format everything. Now, I want to know the GHG emissions. Okay? Control-B, Control-U made that a title. I want to look up in my greenhouse gas emissions table what the metric tons of CO2 are for China. I'm going to do that using a VLOOKUP. A VLOOKUP takes the value that I point to, and you can see it there, looks for a value in the leftmost column of a table, returns a value in the same row from the column you specify. So it's going to look in this other table for all the values that start with China. As soon as it finds a China, it's going to go across and pick up the reference I want, which will be the greenhouse gas emissions. VLOOKUP, the value. So I'm going to be looking for China. Fair enough. My table array, so this is the array of greenhouse gas emissions. So just a table, that's all array means. Now we know that there are 190 countries in the world for which we have this data. Control up arrow. I can go from cell A1 to A, B and C. Now I will be wanting column 2, but this doesn't matter. This is just giving it an array to work with. And it doesn't matter if it's got Afghanistan or Barbados in there, even if they're not on the goods exported list, the top 30 for Queensland, it doesn't matter, it's just flotsam. It will not get picked up in my final table. Control Shift down arrow takes me down to Zimbabwe again. You can see at the top here my VLOOKUP is still going, so I'll just click at the end of it because now I want to put in a column index. In this table, column B, the second column, is the one with the CO2 data, comma 2. Fine. Could I leave it here? No, I couldn't really. What I need to do is tell it the type of lookup. I'm not entirely sure why it's like this, but comma, I can do an approximate match, in which case the columns of the table array must be assorted in ascending order. This would be fine if you weren't dealing with precise data. So, you know, you might have a range, and I might be looking up 0.7 and my table goes 0.5 and 1. That would be a perfectly legitimate use of an approximate match. We're going to use an exact match because our data is like this, it's categorical. Suriname, Sweden, Switzerland, these are countries. These are countries that exist and they're either in or they're out. They're either in the country or not in the country. We need false for an exact match. So give me that. Sorry. False for an exact match, close bracket. Now I can close that down. Didn't find China. Why didn't it find China? Probably it will be under something interesting. Okay, the problem is, see China, F2, home, there's a space in front of all those suckers. Thanks for that data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim the space. Go up to the top. So this is meddling with forces you don't understand. Equals trim over to there, close bracket. As I go down the list, so I've Control C and Control V, look how it's getting rid of that leading space. Control C, and I'm just going to shift page down until I get to Zimbabwe again. There are quicker ways, but we're at Zimbabwe already. Control V. They're all copied. But I hear you say, how is my array going to work? Well, at the moment, it's not. I am going to pick up these values starting from world, shift control down arrow, control C to copy, and I'm going to right with my arrow just to go over there. Now what I'm going to do is just pick up that column D, those values I've highlighted in column D, and paste them into column A. But what I need to do is I need to paste them as text. If I don't copy them as text, the formula, see there's a formula in there, that trim, which got rid of the leading space, the space at the beginning, and the trailing space, any spaces at the end. So trim will go into that formula if I don't paste it as text, and I'll be in a world of hurt. Because this is what will happen. Control V, ref. See, it doesn't like it. I'm going to Control Z to undo that, because that would be an evil thing. Highlight my column again, Control C, right click. Now, I need to, see this little home, paste values. Now I need text. So I just want values. So just paste the values. That will get rid of the leading space. China will no longer have a leading space, and hopefully in my spreadsheet over here, it's picked up the greenhouse gas emissions. Okay? Now, I could copy and paste that formula all the way down my table, except that they're relative references. As soon as I move it down, A2 is going to become A3 for Japan, and I want that to happen. But I do not want GHG emissions A1 to C190 becoming A2 to C191. That ends up in a logical tautology. So I can obviously use named ranges for those of you who know how this sort of thing, but the old school way of doing it is simply to go here, before the A, put a dollar sign in, and, whoops, dollar, that's what a dollar would look like, and a dollar, dollar, so A, $1, dollar C, $1.90, those are now absolute values. When I copy it down, it won't move them, they're not relative. So as if I copied it from C2 to C3, those values in the table array would have moved relative to where I had copied it to. By putting the dollar signs in, I stopped that from happening. Enter, bang, Control C, highlight cell C2, Control C it, and I just click in C3, go down to the very bottom of my list, which was to Italy, release once I'm there, Control V. Almost all of my countries made it, and this is massaging your data. United States of America is #NA. This will be for the same reason before as China, except United States of America will be called something else in this list. So GHG emissions, it's just called United States, cell A182. So there's United States. So if I just change that to United States of America. Bingo, the US is there. Go down to Hong Kong, SAR of China, which is Special Administrative Region, I believe. Up we go to Hong Kong. Hong Kong, where are you? Hong Kong. Aha. Hong Kong doesn't get a separate entry. Isn't that interesting? Now, let's confirm that. There is no Kong. I'll just check that it isn't under SAR. Oh, there we go. Hong Kong, SAR of China. Nope, that's in this goods exported. So Hong Kong is definitely not there. And it's not there. Just do a little trick with filtering. EFF. Or not. One thing I can do is see that column D. I don't need that anymore. Okay, so Hong Kong's not there. Now what I could do is I could combine Hong Kong and China's figures. We're going to skip that for the moment. Russian Federation. Probably just Russia. Yep. Russian Federation. And you can see The only one that doesn't work is Hong Kong. So what I'm going to do to make my life easier and massaging my data some more is I will combine Hong Kong, which presumably has its emissions lumped in with China. So I'm going to add Hong Kong's figure here, which Hong Kong was 341.3. So 341.3. So I'm adding the 341.3 to the Chinese figure and just put an equal sign in front of that. Okay, and then what I've got to do is I've got to get rid of Hong Kong. Right click and delete. Bang, bang, bang. Why did Belgium suddenly become problematic? Oh, that's why. Bring that back. See how I've got two sheets highlighted down here? This is the trap for young players. Click over here, click back in here. Now I can delete that. What it was doing was it says, oh, you've got two sheets selected. I better delete everything on the other sheet as well. Thank you, Excel 97, when that feature came into play. So, China, we've got one less list on our list now because we've got 29, but I've got greenhouse gas emissions for everybody. Now, I'm going to make a leap of faith here, okay? I'm going to put a value to the greenhouse gas emissions. Remember, these are metric tons of CO2 emissions. Now, I don't know if you remember or not, but we used to have something called a carbon emissions trading scheme, and it had a price. So I can get some form of dollar figure for those greenhouse gas emissions I've got. So if I pick up, if I'm just going to Google carbon tax Europe amount, and I'll just go to carbon tax on Wikipedia. With any luck, this will give me a price. Where am I? $X per tonne. Tax per fuel unit, natural gas. Just keep looking for the dollar signs, because I'm an accountant and that's what we do. Okay, the first one I've got here is India charging 100 rupees per metric tonne, $1.60 at 60.5 conversion. What did Australia have? Carbon price of $23. That beats you. $1.60. So I know that got moved around, yada yada. I know we got rid of it. Guess what? It's a number, $23. So I can take up this greenhouse gas emissions, multiply it by 23, which is the amount per tonne. Now I could put that in an input field, but guess what? I've got 29 rows. I'm not going to change them. Control Shift down arrow, Control V. Guess what? That is now dollars. And given that what I originally had in my greenhouse gas emissions was metric tons, so metric tons or megatons? This is why you need to know where your data came from. Back up here to Wikipedia. I'm going to assume that is metric tons, which is what I've been saying all along. So what I'll end up with, if I go back to Excel, back to here, that's 11.9 billion. This is 222,623.9, which doesn't sound like anywhere near enough. So that must be megatons, so I'm going to multiply that by 1,000, you would need to know your data source. 222,623,900. I really don't think that's right, but to make it the same as the other column, which is in millions, 222 million. This means that the country that we export to, Sweden, we export $181 million to, and their total greenhouse gas emissions are worth 1.43 million. Now, I don't believe that for a second. Something's going wrong with my numbers, but we can make that work. Let's see what Bing can do with that. Insert Bing Maps. Probably what I need to do is kill that. Go to here. Please include header and data rows. Down to there. Easiest thing to do is to just delete that. Go to here again. Now I'll insert the Bing map. Okay, I don't need sample data because you already got my data. And I'm going to be wanting a pie chart, which it already knows about. There you go, there's my data. So, the Russian Federation is a slice, a relatively large slice, of greenhouse gas emissions compared to our trade. So that's interesting. Similarly, North America, so United States, Brazil, I can see a slice. Argentina, not so much. Papua New Guinea, scarily, we don't have much for numbers for it. So probably what I'm looking at is megatons, which is, or million tons. Let's see how that might work if I made that million tons. So I know that's going to multiply by a million and divide by a million, but guess what? Well, that doesn't look right either. See how we can make numbers look fun? Go back to how we had. Anyway, you get a picture of what can be done. I can take country, million, greenhouse gas emissions, that's combining two data sets on a Bing. And I can play with that to my heart's content. Give it a bird's eye figure again. And I could find the right figure again, the right location that I want. And I could copy and paste that using a screen capture, as I did before, into a Word document. I'll upload this as something for you to play around with. You can see how the VLOOKUP works. As far as I'm concerned, that's a useful way of combining things in a simple Bing map, which comes with Excel 2013. But there are much more complex ways of doing these things.